Welcome to the Saturday Cup of Joe podcast. This podcast is dedicated to EAS employees of the U.S. Postal Service and members of the National Association of Postal Supervisors. So, pour yourself a cup of coffee and join us for today's episode. And now, here's your host, Robert Wakefield.
Good morning, Branch 32, and good morning to our EAS friends across the country. Welcome to the Saturday Cup of Joe podcast presented by the Nashville Post Office Credit Union. I'm your host, Robert Wakefield, president of Branch 32. Thank you. Yes, indeedy. It's great. Thank you so much. It's great to have you here. So let's go ahead and pour that first cup. For 100 years, the Nashville Post Office Credit Union has been turning dreams into reality. Since opening our doors in 1925, we've been your trusted financial partner. Our success stories are countless, thanks to our core value, people helping people. Here's to another century of integrity, compassion, and commitment to your financial well-being. The Nashville Post Office Credit Union, a tradition of people helping people since 1925. We're going to continue our series called Taking Care of Yourself. It's a series that I think all of us need to hear from time to time because it's something that we don't always do for ourselves. And we've covered a lot of topics when it comes to this particular theme. We first talked about taking your lunch and how important that was. That was in an earlier podcast. We also talked about stress and the role that stress plays in your life and how to go about managing that. We talked about being paid properly and how important that is, and why that's important to take care of yourself is being paid the way you should be paid. And then last week we looked at tea time and talked about that in a little more in depth, and we talked about the 3 A's that you use in order to get to tea time. You make your boss aware of it, you get them to acknowledge it, and you get them to approve it. So it's been a really good series so far. I hope that you've enjoyed that. So today we're going to look at another aspect of your job that I think is sometimes overlooked. Sometimes we don't think about it. And it's the importance of rest. Now we have to think of rest as work's equal partner. Well, let me say that again. Rest is work's equal partner. I can describe what many of you are going through right now. I've heard you call me 1,000 times, it seems like. It'll be a supervisor, it'll be an SDO, it'll be a postmaster, or it'll be any other EAS for that matter. And they'll tell me stuff like this. I have been working from sun up to sundown for 3 weeks straight now. So let me ask you something. How productive are you when you work that many hours? When it gets to be about hour 9, hour 10, hour 11, hour 12, 13, whatever the case may be, how productive are you as a supervisor in doing your job? You know, when you go through the motions like that, when you go into autopilot, that's when mistakes happen. Oftentimes, safety takes a back seat when you're that mentally exhausted. Reports, you don't get those done timely. You don't get all the checklist stuff done. You get home, your phone is ringing at your boss. You forgot to do this report. See me at a telecon tomorrow at 10 a.m. How many of you heard that? You find yourself getting on more and more lists, and as you get on more and more lists, you have telecons on why you're on that list and what you're going to do to get off of that list. It's never ending. Well, one of the things I think is important to remember is that you need rest in order to be an effective manager. There's a lady by the name of Saundra Dalton Smith, and she has written a book called Sacred Rest. And in that book, she talks about the 7 kinds of rest that everyone needs. the 7 kinds of rest that everyone needs. So we're going to touch on those here right now. And the first one is the obvious one. You need physical rest. We, as humans, have to have this physical rest. This is rest from any kind of physical activities that fatigue us, such as if you're exercising or if you're just doing everyday chores or you're just going to work. You've got to have some rest from those physical activities. And sleep and relaxation, even napping, fall under the category of physical rest. So it's something that's very important that she talks about in her book. The second thing she talks about in her book is she mentions mental rest. Let me ask you this question. As soon as your head hits the pillow, does your brain turn on and just go crazy? There have been times where I've laid down, exhausted, and yet my mind is going 1,000 miles. I've got to get this done. I've got to get this report done. I've got to make sure I've got this route covered. It's just, did I bring someone in that I was supposed to bring in? Mental rest is so important that you got to have the sleep. That's helpful, but it doesn't feel like it's restoring good enough. It doesn't feel restorative. So mental rest, to assist with that, Dalton Smith encouraged you to take short breaks throughout the workday. So that's an idea that she had. Number 3, she calls it sensory rest. She says this: we live in a world of constant stimulation, screens, conversations, lights, music, pets, children, etc. Dalton Smith discusses this concept of intentional moments of sensory deprivation to help recharge yourselves. And that's important. We're sitting in front of a computer screen all day long, and then what do we do when we get home? We get on the computer. I'm guilty of that. I really am. The fourth kind of rest that she suggests that every person needs is one called emotional rest. Now, emotional rest, according to Dalton Smith, is this chance to allow yourself to be authentic. If someone asks you how you're doing and they recognize that you're upset, and you go with the automatic response, "Oh, I'm fine." Well, that's a suppression, according to Dalton Smith, of your emotional place, and it adds internal pressure to you. Instead of saying fine, we can allow ourselves to be authentic by saying, "I'm actually really frustrated with blank." And this release of an authenticity, according to her, allows your emotional circuit to feel more rested. So emotional rest is also critically important. Social rest, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, do you gain energy from others or do you feel drained by spending time with each other? You just need to know where your limits are so that you can take a break from whichever one you are, with your introvert or extrovert. Creative rest is number 6. For those who work in the creative fields, creative rest is an absolute must, she says. How often do we struggle with writer's block or creative fatigue or burnout from brainstorming and problem solving? Randy Bachman, Bachman Turner Overdrive, was a songwriter, and he would go into songwriting sessions with other writers, and in the middle of the songwriting session, he would get up and walk out the door and be gone for an hour or two. And during one such session, the co-writer he was writing with called his manager and says, "Listen, Randy has walked out of the session. What do I do?" And the guy on the other end of the phone said, "Stay there. He'll be back." And sure enough, after an hour or two, he'd come back and he'd have all the lyrics thought of in his head, what he was going to write. It's just that creative rest that he needed. And the final thing that Dalton Smith suggests is spiritual rest. Our bodies and our minds may crave this spiritual rest, and it's connecting on a deeper level to God. And I encourage you, if you are not in a church of any kind, I encourage you to do so. I have another podcast called Two Brothers, One Bible podcast, where we talk about spiritual things and how important it is. And by finding yourself in that spiritual realm, you can find yourself some rest. So, why is a retired postmaster talking about the importance of rest? Well, I've been where you've been. I've been exactly where you are. And when you have that kind of experience, you want to share what you know or what you've experienced to others. So remember, rest is work's equal partner. So treat it as that equal partner that it is, because that is a way that you can take care of yourself. Okay, I'm ready to take care of myself with another cup of coffee. What do you think? It's time for the second cup. For 100 years, that's 36,525 days, 876,600 hours, and over 52 million minutes, the Nashville Post Office Credit Union has been a beacon of financial support for the postal community. Since 1925, we've been here for life's big moments and everyday triumphs. Each day, hour, and minute, we are committed to our mission of people helping people. Join us and be a part of that tradition. The Nashville Post Office Credit Union. People helping people since 1925. And for our second cup today, I wanted to talk a little bit about the brand new year, 2025. Can you believe it's been 25 years since we had Y2K? Remember Y2K? Where a lot of folks thought the end of the world was coming, the power grid was going to shut off, the computers were not going to work anymore. It was just going to be a tough time for everybody. Remember that? Oh, me. What a great time that was. But 2025, I'm shocked that we're 25 years after Y2K, and every year there's this thing called New Year's resolutions. And so what are yours? What are your New Year's resolutions for 2025? Is it to get in better shape? Is it to lose weight? Those seem to be some of the most popular ones. Or is it to spend more time with your family? Which is nothing wrong with that. That's a great resolution. Well, let me give you one from a NAPS perspective. Let me give you just kind of an idea of what I think. Let me give you the resolution this year to attend a branch meeting. Some branches meet once a quarter. Other branches meet every other month. So your branch is different. At Branch 32, we meet 10 times a year. We meet every month except for July and December, I think that's the ones. And we have 10 meetings a year. And so we want you to, if you're in Branch 32, we want you to please try to come to a branch meeting in 2025, or even attend a state convention. If you've never been to a state convention, wherever you are, try to attend a state convention. Tennessee is having their state convention in April of this year. So that's an opportunity for those that are in Tennessee to come and be a part of that as well. And we just think that it's going to be a great convention, and we hope that you'll give it a shot. Branch 32, like I said, has 10 meetings a year. Our next meeting will be January the 28th. And we will be meeting at the Nashville Post Office Credit Union. So the resolution that I want you to take away from this is I want you to get involved in your branch. Whatever branch you're in, get involved. By being involved in your branch, you are more informed. You connect with other EAS employees. You connect with NAPS members, and you get more out of your branch. So that is the thing that I want you to have as a resolution for 2025, is to attend a branch meeting. So will you take me up on that? If you will, there'll be $25 in the mail for you. No, there won't. I'm not sending you any money for going to your own branch meeting. That's not what I'm going to do. But anyway, I hope that you will do that this year, is go to a branch meeting. So, thanks for listening. I'm going to say that again. Thanks for listening to today's Saturday Cup of Joe podcast presented by the Nashville Post Office Credit Union. Now, you know the drill. You know what you need to do. You need to share this podcast with all your EAS friends and NAPS members. Let them know what is going on with this podcast. You know, for December, the numbers are in. Tennessee had 51 downloads and Illinois had 16 downloads. The state of Arizona had 13 downloads. Indiana had 10. California and North Carolina both had 9 downloads. And, you know, in the last podcast, I asked you to tell me which branch you were from. And I got an answer. It was from our own National Secretary Treasurer, Jimmy Warden. He said, Robert, I'm in branch 100. Great. That is so I've heard from 2 branches. I've heard from 695, which is out of South Carolina, and someone from branch 100. Send me where you're listening this podcast from. Let me know what branch it is at SaturdayCupOfJoe@gmail.com. I'm Robert Wakefield, and remember, every great weekend starts with a great cup of Joe. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for tuning in to the Saturday Cup of Joe podcast. Please note that the views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of Robert Wakefield and do not necessarily reflect the views of the National Association of Postal Supervisors. We welcome your questions and comments, so send those to SaturdayCupOfJoe@gmail.com.